Hey everyone, today on my vlog I want to kind of discuss like a history of our abuse and trauma as far as what I, Tris, can remember and have been able to recover, and that's working with my other alters. So basically I kind of want to talk about that and my original fracturing of my mind. So basically, and in my last video, in my intro, I kind of talk about how all of my experience really relates to being in Monarch projects, and I want to be able to get into that also, especially the tactics that they use against you continually. So even when you think that you're free of everything, like you'll keep ending up in situations like stage situations, basically, which is like, it's basically to get you isolated. It's all these situations that happen to get you isolated so that you can be useful. So even before I knew about targeted individuals or anything like that, I had had these experiences, and that's why when I started, or when we all started doing research and we found out about everything and how it all ties together, we were able to make perfect sense of it with the knowledge. So basically, my initial trauma, I was sexually abused by my stepdad, my mom's second husband. She's been married 3 times. And that started in, like, I guess 2002, I think it was. Basically, it happened between the ages of 13 and 15 for me. So between those ages, that's when my abuse happened. And I just, it's really hard. It's really hard to talk about all this, especially on camera, but I feel like I have to. So, anyways, basically, like I was talking about in my last video, when I see the way the Monarch projects work is that if you're a candidate that actually is successful in their projects, you'll be able to go on to do more things and like be active as a celebrity in various ways, or even just in a basically like a leadership role in terms of like social engineering. So that's kind of what a lot of the basic Monarch projects are for, is especially social engineering. So I wasn't that successful when I was younger because basically, like when I was 14 or 15, I guess I had just turned 15 a couple months before. But I finally had like a complete suicidal breakdown, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And that was when I was diagnosed with severe PTSD and depression, anxiety, the works. And especially because I would have all these nightmares and stuff, and the nightmares are actually what led me to master lucid dreaming and stuff like that. But so anyways, because of all of the setup for the Monarch project, they use trigger words on you to make it so that you can't remember anything. And because at the time I was like 14 or 15 or whatever, I had no idea of the actual trauma that I had actually gone through. We've only been able to get those memories back in the last year. So at the time when I came out and told everyone why I had tried to kill myself, I told everyone that I hadn't had sex with my stepdad, that I had only done oral sex with him and stuff like that, and drinking and smoking and just doing different drugs, stuff like that. So, but it was because at the time I firmly believed that I had never had sex with him actually, and that I was still a virgin. And so like I think the most traumatic part of having to realize all of this for all of us is realizing that, like, because we had all thought for so many years that like we had lost our virginity to our husband. And that just like was totally shattered and heartbreaking and disturbing and fucked up, and I still don't know how to process it. All I know is that I have to keep calm about it. So that was probably the worst part. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we blocked it out, is because we didn't want to do it so much. And so anyways, because at the time I had told everyone in my police report that I had not done that, he was only charged with 11 months in prison for gross sexual assault of a minor. So my mom also was, my mom has worked as head of CPS or DHHS, Child Protective Services, Department of Health and Human Services, and she's been a supervisor there. Here in Maine, she worked for CPS and Protective Services, and up in Alaska, she was the supervisor for Child Protective Services. And it's obvious from talking with my therapist, because I used to think that it was possible that I was just being paranoid, but as I got older, I really began to believe that my mother knew that I was being sexually abused. And that was something that took me a long time to come to terms with, but I've had a chance to talk to my therapist about it, about why I feel that way. And it's because of the absolutely infinite and numerous red flags that she blatantly ignored. And every therapist I've ever talked to about this has just like mouth agape at me, been like, seriously, like she ignored that. And like, so like, the things, and this ties into the things that I can't remember all of, but I can remember some of. So like, I'm from Maine, and my stepdad used to take me all sorts of places with him, and I can't remember everything, but a couple of the things I've been able to get back in the last year is that we used to go to Boston sometimes, and I know his dad lived somewhere around Boston. I remember that. I remember like at some points like taking his son to a park and stuff like that, but what I really remember is walking through the gardens in Boston Commons. And that's pretty much all I can remember of it. And that I can remember that we would get like wine coolers on the way down and drink and stuff like that. But I can't really remember the rest of the trips. I don't remember any of it. So that's kind of hard. But the things that we've been able to get back that are important are about like how it ties into the local pedophile rings and stuff like that, and how the local pedophile rings tried to get back involved in my life after I had been isolated in 2011 successfully. And also, I just wanted to say that through all of these events, like my husband has always taken me back and always fixed things with me. And I'm really thankful that he's been there for me to help pick me up every time I fucking fall on my face. And but anyways, the local pedophile rings. He had all of these other friends that were in what he called situations like ours, which was he had friends who had either stepdaughters or relatives, etc. Anyways, how it ties in with the local pedophile rings was that Ethan had all of these friends that were in situations like ours, where they were either involved with a stepdaughter or a family member or something like that. And usually they were like young teenage girls, like we're talking 11, 12, 13, and a couple of them were older. And I can remember going to some of these people's houses, and they had boats and stuff like that, and like we would go out on boats, we would take boats out, and we would go do stuff like that, but we would be around all of these people. And then sometimes he would have them over to our house for barbecues. And I always assumed like my mother never knew about that they were the people that were involved on that kind of stuff. But at this point, I wouldn't be surprised, especially because she kept me from testifying at his hearing, which is why he only got 11 months in prison. One of the reasons anyway. I mean, the other is that obviously because I couldn't remember what I wasn't supposed to remember, which was that he had sex with me up until this last year. So there's that, but also because my mother wouldn't allow me to testify at the hearing. But beyond that, my mom had also, after my abuse was over, my suicide attempt happened, and I ended up in the hospital, and I came back. I came home from school one day, and actually, I just found a journal on this. If you give me like 1 second, I'll just go grab it. Okay, so this is my journal from January 5th of 2005, and one of the things that I've always been really thankful for, and we've all always been really thankful for, is that we always kept a journal, and I have a shelf of over 10 years worth of journals that we've kept. So I was looking through these last night, trying to find some missing pieces and stuff, and This was my journal from January 5th, 2005 about my mom and how she knew and stuff like that. So I wrote, this could very well be the worst week of my life. Then I come home from school with this garbage all over the place and some papers in it. And they were from Ethan. It was 8 pages long, but guess what? Quotations. Your mom's pretty open-minded. She could accept it, but we'll have to hide it from social workers and counselors and Casey until she's 18. There was a lot more sick stuff, but wow, I literally feel sick reading. How can mom do this to me? Why? What have I done to her? Oh wait, I ruined her marriage, right? I hope Mr. Someone comes to get us soon because I can't be here freaking out. I just don't have anyone and I don't have anything. So basically, and I can remember this day, I came home from school and an animal had gotten into our trash. I'm sure my mom didn't want to keep any of the mail at the house because I would have found it. We had a really small house at that point. And I knew that my mom had been going to see Ethan in jail after she found out. And just like this whole crazy conspiracy around the whole thing. But basically, like, she was going to see him in jail to bring him his mail. And that was when I started finding the letters, because apparently they were writing letters to each other. And then after I had this confrontation with my mom about the letters, she actually moved to China, the country. And I moved in with my grandparents. But yeah, so my mom ended up moving to China, the country, and she didn't come back for a couple of years. But basically, like, in a lot of ways, it really shows that she knew, because one of the reasons why when I ended up trying to kill myself when I was 15, Ethan had been telling me for almost a year that my mom knew what he was doing with me. And he had actually, like, I mean, kind of like brainwashed me in that way. He convinced me that my mom knew. And so when I was in the hospital and I was sitting there with my mom and she was like, well, why did you try to kill yourself? I looked at her and I said, you know why. You know why. And she was like, her face started getting red. And because a couple of months before, my cousin had actually come out with allegations against Ethan, saying that he had tried to do stuff with her also. And so I think that she really did know, and that was one of the reasons why when she prepared me to talk to DHS when they came to our house investigating my cousin's claim, because they wanted to check with me, I don't really remember what she told me to say, but like she kind of was like, Ethan's not really doing none of this is true, right? Like, I don't know. She was kind of weird about it and kind of, I think, almost coached me on what to say. So that kind of got them off of our back. But then, like, a couple months after that whole thing with my cousin happened, I had my suicide attempt, and it all came out. Well, I told her, I was like, you know why I did this, you know why. And her face started getting red, and I was like, you know, Ethan's been making me do stuff, and I've been doing stuff with Ethan for, like, a couple of years. And, you know, like, there's no way she didn't know. He would take me out of state with him all the time. He camped in the backyard with me for an entire summer. And actually, I think every summer that we lived with him, he camped out back with me, like, all summer. Even on nights it was raining sometimes. Wouldn't you think it was weird that your husband wanted to spend every night with with his stepdaughter rather than sleeping in a bed with you? Because I think most mothers would have. So, you know, there was that. And that, you know, he was always taking me to get whatever I wanted. And he was always my advocate in my corner, trying to talk my mom into shit I wanted to do. He had actually, like, lied to my mom about a shit ton of stuff. Like, he was the first person that taught me how to be an internet pirate, how to use, like, how to do computers really well. And, he had convinced my mom that we spent like $400 a month on these pirated movie servers, that we had to pay $400 to, like, pay for this server that we were downloading movies from, which all of you guys that are internet pirates know, like, that's totally bullshit. The servers are free, like Pirate Bay and stuff like that. Like, you do not have to pay for that. He was basically telling her that it was a $400 a month charge for all of these free movies so that he could cover up what we were spending on drugs and alcohol. And she never caught on to that apparently either. So, and like I was really, I had like a certain group of friends that I was friends with, a core group of friends, a few people, because that year that my abuse started, I had moved to a new school. And so I was in a brand new place, had to make new friends, and I only had a couple people that I really trusted. And I was kind of, I won't say like antisocial. I wasn't like a popular kid. I just sort of like had this little group of people basically, and um, I kind of kept to myself a lot, especially after the abuse started. So like basically like I think it was that Ethan was always trying to keep me isolated because I would always try to like get a boyfriend and he would always like make fun of them or like put it down. I don't know. He was always trying to keep me from like having a successful relationship with a boyfriend. So I mean, especially the idea of dating for me was really um, it was kind of stupid at the time, actually, because I kept like picking all of these guys that were like still boys, and most of them didn't even want to really do anything with me. So that was kind of weird. But so after my abuse ended, though, I still had all these instances where like I felt like Ethan wouldn't leave me alone, and he still to this day he only lives 20 minutes away from me, and everywhere I've ever lived, he has never lived more than 20 minutes away from me. um, it's like it's really frustrating. Like really, he just lives right down a couple of roads basically, and I had to stop going to places that were social gatherings because I would see him there. Like in Maine, we have like the annual 4th of July thing in Halifax Park in Winslow. I can't go to that. I would see him there every fucking year, and he would always stare at me and like make eye contact with me. And when he knew where I worked at, when I was a teenager, I worked at Dairy Queen, and he would like come in and get ice cream and stuff like that. And so it was just like he never left me alone. And I don't know, it's just he like ugh, it's creepy. It's really creepy. And then so like on top of that, um, beyond that, beyond my mom knowing and everything, and still to this day denying that, denies everything. Um, there was in 2000 and see, this is really hard for me to talk about because I wasn't the experiencer. This was Casey's thing. But we had this experience, and Justin's told me a little bit more about it, and I've read a little bit about it. So I feel like it's worth mentioning. But we had this experience, I think it was 2011. It was 2011. And basically, okay, so the 2011 incident, I had been successfully isolated again. I ended up moving. I left Justin because I had a job as an administrative assistant at a company, and so I was making like not awesome money, but enough to scrape by. And things with Justin and I at the time had kind of come to a head, so I apparently left him and moved out with some other guy, and that guy was married, and obviously you know how that story goes, and it didn't work out for me. So I ended up in an apartment by myself, and I was isolated. And like a couple weeks into this period living by myself, this guy, and I'm not even going to describe because seriously, I was threatened with death if I ever talked about any of this. Um, this is what I can see in my memory right now. So there's a guy that came into where I was working at this big distribution factory place, and I was an administrative assistant, and he had just gotten hired on. And he didn't really seem like a person that was going to like, he didn't seem like he was there to do the job because he only came in like three days, and then he stopped coming in. Like I almost would say that it seemed like a recruitment, okay? And so, like, he came in and he talks to me and, like, he, like, I don't know, pays special attention to me. And he tells me that he wants me to be involved with this house cleaning business, okay? And I can see myself saying that it sounded sketchy and I didn't want to do it. Well, at the time, I was having a lot of financial trouble because I made enough money to scrape by, but Justin and I were involved on like a lawyer thing against each other at the time. So Justin had filed for like children for partial rights to my first daughter with me. So I had all these lawyer fees that I had to pay for, and I was paying a lawyer $100 an hour, which was a bill that I was racking up and had to pay. And then I had this rent and internet bill, phone bill, you know, how this all goes. And basically, I was being threatened with eviction like every month because I just couldn't fucking get ahead. I just kept getting more bills and more screwed over. And that is part of the whole Monarch isolating and entrapment situation right there as well, because that puts you in the position where you have to do what you have to do when it's offered to you. So this guy ends up telling me, because I told him I didn't want to do the house cleaning business, I thought it sounded sketchy. They wanted to store electronics at my house, and I assumed they were stolen, because even Casey back then wasn't that stupid. She always has paid attention to her feelings, and that's something that we have always done because we're an Aries, and so we go with our gut impulse. So I wasn't going to do that, but he basically told me that he had this guy friend who, he didn't really say this in these words, but I figured this out from experiencing it. He had this guy friend that he like kind of recruited or worked for, finding girls that he could basically kind of like pimp out in a way. And so what he told me was that he was going to bring this guy over, and this guy was going to check me out. So I ended up having him and this guy over, and the guy really, really liked me, so much so that he said that I wasn't going to be one of the girls that did porn for him because he was making money off of these porn videos he was getting these girls to do. And I wasn't going to be one of the local prostitutes that was being run around town. He said that he wanted me to be his girl. And he basically offered me for the night, he was going to pay me X amount of dollars. And that he wanted me to be like his girlfriend, kind of. And, you know, he told me that he would take care of me and get my nails done and, you know, take care of all my problems. But that I was never to ever go to anyone with any of the information that I knew about him, because he was a person that gets rid of people. And I still, even though I'm talking about a secondhand memory that is not mine, it's Casey's, I can still, like, feel and see, like, almost through her eyes, like, his face and like how deadly fucking serious it was when he said that to me, and how scared she was. And anyways, like, yep, she did the whole thing for the evening, and then she never called him again, and she never picked up his what do you call it, like the phone. Like, we've always had straight talk phones so that we can just get rid of a phone whenever we need to. And yeah, that was one of the phones we burned. So basically, like, she realized, especially because the night that he had come over and made her the offer, like, he was like, I'm going to do dinner for you and drinks and stuff like that. And she always thought that she was drugged because she couldn't really remember the evening. But I can hear some of the things that he said to her that I think stick out in my mind, in terms of the fact that people knew who I was and what I was before I even did, or we even did. And so she always thought that because he did up all the drinks and all of the food that maybe he drugged her, and that's why she didn't remember. But personally, I think it was the use of trigger words. I think that he did exactly what Ethan had access to and used trigger words on us, because I have a memory of him saying to us, like, you don't even know what you are. You don't even know what you are. And he thought, like, he just kept telling me, like, how special and amazing I was and how different I was, and pointing out the differences between me and all of the girls that he runs. And he also started kind of creepily, I have this, like, vague memory of him, like, telling us about our childhood. And that was also one of the reasons why we never called him back. Because seriously, like, thinking about it now from a much more adult point of view, and all of these years later, like, seriously, he was able to read so much about me or know so much about me. And um, just the way that, like, I got perfectly isolated and then almost like targeted for this ring. The really crazy part is that my cousin, who Ethan had tried stuff on her as well, she got mixed up in this pedophile ring, the exact same one that I'm talking about right now. And so the one that they were trying to bring me into in that situation, she actually ended up becoming involved with them. And so basically what they would do is take the girls from around town that they could get accessible. And, you know, a lot of the times, like from what I've heard from the people involved in it, it really didn't matter if you were under 18 or not. So, with my cousin's case, I can tell you from firsthand watching what she went through and hearing what she went through. On her account, I would like to say that, you know, she will tell you that she was gang raped, you know, but they paid her. And so, like, she basically, my cousin has a bad addiction to drugs. And so they basically got her hooked into these drugs and stuff like that, or they had what she wanted or whatever. And so she was hanging out with these people for a while where, you know, she would do these sex acts and they would give her drugs. And that's how they hook you into this little niche of society. Basically, she was being run from Maine to Massachusetts, and this is how they make those pedophile rings work nationally, is they will take you out of state if it's profitable to them. So basically they were running her back and forth from Maine to Massachusetts to New York, basically all up and down the East Coast. And that's what they were doing with her, and that's what I actually luckily chose not to be a part of and escaped from, recognizing that things were scary and fucky. Also with the fact that I have a very strong will, and I am never, ever, ever been addicted to heroin or coke or anything like that. Like, I mean, I've tried opium a few times, and I've tried coke once. These were times when I was under 16. So, definitely in my adult life, like, the only thing that I've ever done is smoke pot. And Casey did LSD to get her memories back. So there's a whole science to that, and you can look into it if you are interested in how LSD reconnects neural pathways and can be very useful in healing trauma. So that's what she was doing. But regardless, that's kind of like most of our history into all of this, and especially with my family. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I always wondered if my grandmother wasn't like part of all of this, and the reason why I've been targeted my whole life isn't because of my grandmother and like stuff like that, because you have to understand, like, I'm an American, my mom's an American, but my grandmother is from Sweden. And my grandmother was born on this tiny island in Sweden. And basically, when she was like 22 or something, she had already had these 3 kids and a family, and she ran away one day and never went back. She spent a bunch of years touring through Europe, living in different countries. She speaks like 5 languages. And she ended up marrying in Germany, a American soldier stationed in Germany. And she married him and got pregnant with my aunt, which is my cousin's mother. And so my cousin's mother was born in Germany, on an American air base or whatever. And so then my grandmother was flown back here to America, where she had my mom. So there's always been this like puzzle as to what my grandmother's life really was before she came to America, because she won't talk about it. She won't talk about any of it. And in fact, we didn't even know that she ran away from a family until 2012. Casey says that she was pregnant with Allie when she found out. But that part of the family finally contacted my mom and Brenda, her sister, and finally was like, hey, we're your long lost secret family. And so, like, seriously, that was only a couple years ago. And so that was a secret part of her life that she never told us. And, the rest of us have to wonder, what else was she hiding? So, there's this whole like weird part to my family. My dad was never in my life. Pretty much, he was like sperm donor. My mom had me when she was a teenager. She was like 16. So, my dad obviously was not really ever involved on my life, except for a couple months when I was a teenager, and that was short-lived and didn't work out, and he didn't like me and still won't talk to me. So, I've never had that. I mean, the only thing I had close to a dad was my grandfather, and he was like the greatest dad that I ever could have asked for, ever. He was better than any dad. So, I was lucky that I had him. But you can definitely see how, like, in terms of my family, like, it's all fractured and everything is, like, weird. And um, it's very much like putting together the pieces of a big conspiracy. I mean, especially with realizing as I get older, like, my mom definitely knew that I was being abused, and that, like, her role as the person who takes your children away, being a supervisor of DHS and working for DHS even before she was the supervisor, and just all of this stuff. And her attitude to this day, like, I can't even have a relationship with my mother because every time she talks to me, she just says rude things, pushes people's buttons, like, and then her and Ethan, like my brother, I have such a fucked up relationship with my brother because when he was like 12, and you have to understand that my brother has been a guinea pig of the medical industry since he was 5 years old. So he was like mentally and emotionally like 8 years stunted. So they tried to explain to a kid who had the physical body of a 12-year-old when my brother was 12, okay? But his emotional and mental self was like 7, seriously. And they tried to explain to him what had happened between me and Ethan so that Ethan could stay in my brother's life and be a part of Dustin's life. And to this day, like, my brother still has like a weird relationship with him and looks up to him in terms of like how brilliant Ethan was at computers and wants to be just like him in that respect. And so my brother has never ever fully understood because they tried to explain to him what happened to me before he even knew what a blowjob was. You know what I mean? Like, it's like trying to tell a kid that doesn't know what sex is, about sexual abuse, which is what they did. And so he still really does not comprehend what happened to me and thinks that it's acceptable to be in a relationship with that guy and doesn't view what happened to me even as like really all that fucked up. So, I mean, just the whole thing, it's so much to live with. And then, especially as I get older and I have to like be really vigilant about not letting myself fall into situations where I'm going to be isolated and try and be targeted for various things. Because that's a real problem in my life. So like as I am trying to pick myself up from our most recent fall, it's like I just keep realizing that I'm so lucky that my husband's actually still here and cares about me, because this whole thing has been crazy. And I can see why my alter was absolutely and completely obsessed with figuring out the truth, exposing the government, exposing everything, and just like completely manic about researching, because there's so much going on and it's all such a big, vast spider web network that no one would ever believe it. In fact, probably everyone that watches this would rather just believe that I'm a fanatic that lives in a fantasy world and that everything I'm saying is made up. But it's not. And this is the world that we live in. And every day that we don't do anything, and every 4 years when we elect a new political leader who is also a pedophile, and you have no idea what those people do to get into positions of power. Like, I'm sorry, but if you just, oh, don't even get me started on politics. Seriously, like, all those people are selected to lead you. And I think that's one of the reasons why Casey was made to go away. And I think that Casey was targeted to go away because she had figured out so much and she really wanted to do something about it. And so, like, I find myself in the position where I feel like if I talk too much or if I say the wrong thing, that the same thing is going to happen to me. And she had this incident a couple of months ago I was reading about in her journal of online gang stalking, where basically, like, in a group that she created, someone came in and, like, posted all of these weird photoshopped Facebook posts between her and someone she didn't know. And it was like they were trying to have this conversation with her. And it was a threatening conversation, okay? Um, Actually, I could release that video on this channel. I might do that. I don't know if I should. I'll think about it. Because I have a couple of videos of it that she had put up on her channel but took down because of her emotional response. Her fans weren't very happy with her. And so basically, like, she has them privatized, but I could put up a copy if I wanted to. But regardless, they threatened basically to kill her husband, and said a bunch of other really bizarre things. And I have to believe that they wouldn't be spending this time on us if they didn't think that we were a threat. So basically, like, it all sounds crazy if you're looking at this from a third perspective who's never experienced any of this, but this is the world that we all live in. Okay, these things are happening not just to me, but to so many other people. And every time we elect new leaders, like, we're just furthering it. I'm pretty sure that the only solution to fixing all of this is to learn to lead yourself and to stop relying on people to lead you. Because, you know, it is the shadow government that is doing this to us. And it is all of these people that are indirectly and off the books involved on these projects. You know, the Monarch project and MK Ultra projects. You know, that's what we're talking about. So, you know, everyone doesn't care until it happens to them. And that's how I feel about it. Like, people are going to watch this and they would rather just say that I was crazy, but as soon as it happens to them, it's real. And, or someone you care about. And so I think for a lot of people, that's why the world is getting so much worse, is because they don't care until it happens to them. No one cares until something happens to them. So I want to be here to speak up for the people that this is happening to. And so I think that I have pretty actually well covered the history of our abuse a bit, and the things that we've been through in our family. And if you have any questions, put them in the comment box below. And I can see that this talk is getting pretty long, and I'm sorry about that. But history is a big subject, even if you're just a bunch of people crammed into one body. These are the things that this body has done and people in this body have done and been exposed to, and the world needs to know about it. So that's about all I've got for you today.